Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Hope you guys are doing well today. So I see Keith is in the house. Hello, Keith. Sassy's here, of course. One Arctic plasma creature. We all have scales. Look at your skin. Yes. Really interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Hello, Suzanne. Good morning, Ozboy, Miss Dragon, Deep Waters. Kimmy, hello.
Hi, Kimmy. Hi, Miss Dragon. Hi, Ozboy. Hi, Suzanne. Hi, Keith. It's great to see you guys again. I love this part. It's my favorite part.
Hi, Sylvain. Hi, Sarah. Good to see you guys. We love all you guys. So, this is really kind of like my favorite stuff. I know the Earth Change stuff is what made the channel grow, but this is like, to me, the funnest stuff. It's like really trying to piece together exactly what's our history, what's exactly up with everything we see around us. Deeper down the rabbit hole you get, the more wild and crazy it gets, most definitely. Well, I see Love Matters is in the house. Good to see you. Hello, Alienated. Hello, Tom. Tom knows where we're going.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Hi, Debbie. Hi, Emperor Rex. Hi, Viola.
It's good. It's filling up real nice. I like this. This is fun stuff. And I love the reptilian stuff too. It's morbid. It's intriguing. It's mysterious. It's, I don't know, super curious.
It is. I just don't know how anybody could go through, starting with our mythology, study comparative mythology, then look at like all the evidence we have left all over the place, and we've talked about so much evidence in like the medieval artwork. It's everywhere we look. When we piece things together, it's easy to see we've never been alone, and we might be the newcomers here, maybe, even comparatively speaking. Hi, Manny. Welcome aboard. Good to have you here. Suzanne, good to have you. Angry Squirrel Productions. Good to see you. Yeah, it's all interconnected. Hello up there in the San Francisco Bay Area. Hi, Pam. Hi, Soul Family. God bless you too. Yeah, it's fascinating, and are we still controlled by these beings, and what's really the story here? We got Anu221. First time here. Well, welcome to the house.
Hi, Anu221. I do that too, except I go toot toot.
Hi, Judy. Good to see you. How are things down at Fort Myers? I'm sure they're a lot warmer than they are here. And, this feels, for us, it feels pretty damn cold here today. I'm not sure what we're in. I think we're only in the 40s, and it's wet, which is really unusual for here. 40s and wet. Not pleasant. That's what I was saying to Cindy. I said, December and January is a good time of year to be somewhere like Fort Myers.
Yeah. We're running a little late this year, but maybe next year when we do the rounds, we'll make it there on time.
Yeah, most definitely. And hello, Catherine. Demons. Yeah, we've done the labeling thing before. I think there's a lot of different beings, honestly, a lot of different beings. 75 in Fort Myers today, 75 for a high. So, it's pretty cool everywhere when 75 is your high in Fort Myers. And so let's take a look at some of the evidence that we see. That we've covered this with the artwork before. Curious, right? These little clouds, and we see, Christ and Mary, I would assume, looking on down from above. The cloud is there, and they're above the cloud in a circle. And we see what looks to be a pope with his fish hat, or at least a bishop. And all the clouds, are they hiding a ship. You know, it's pretty cool when we look at stuff like this. And then I'm going to jump ahead. We see like this lenticular cloud formation. I mean, we're very familiar with this. Looks like a UFO hovering over Colorado, you know, and the way it moves too is kind of curious. Just watching it, you know, go and move its way. You know, we saw a cloud that reminded me of. It moved kind of like a Chinese dragon, and it was way low. It was yesterday, and I didn't get any photos of it. I was driving. We were, you know, on a dirt trail halfway in the middle of nowhere, and tons of chems up in the sky. And then this was at a very low elevation. I mean, these mountains weren't super high, but this thing was down just a hair above the mountaintops. And it was moving in the opposite direction of all the other clouds. And it struck us like crazy.
It did. Have you ever been in a car wash, like when your car is still, but the wash part is moving and suddenly you feel like you're moving? It was like everything was so surreal and so weird. So it was hard to tell like what was still and what was moving because everything was sort of opposite direction. It was weird.
Now, you know, Cindy's been in this area right next to the military base for almost 30 years. And so, you know, the locals here, they talk about 2 times in a month, right? Where, you know, they kind of know there's ships coming in. And like you always say, oh, there's going to be a light show tonight. There's going to be a light show tonight because of the certain types of clouds that come that they use to block out the ships.
Mm-hmm. It's ominous too because they'll kind of move over the mountain and they'll just sit there and they'll sit in one spot, you know, like nothing is going to move them, not wind, not a storm, nothing. And they'll just cover that one spot. And then we'll have like those light shows behind the clouds and it looks like lightning, but there's no thunder, zero thunder.
Yeah, you know, just curious, but you know somebody's around. So, you know, we've seen this type of artwork, and then here, you know, you see again the circular UFO shooting down the light. These are all over. We've seen these, you know, obviously somebody up flying around. I mean, how else can you take that? That's somebody in a craft, you know, flying around quite clearly. And this is while Christ is on the cross. And then this one is like my favorite. Here we see, you know, the cloud, UFO shooting down. This is basically a dove right there, if you can make it out, which is signifying the Holy Spirit going through the crown chakra. And this is this is basically announcing, you know, the conception, the Immaculate Conception, as we see the angel's wings here talking to the bishop or the priest there, you know, and that's got to be Gabriel. Interesting stuff. I mean, the symbology, and you know, these are going back to the 13th, 14th century. Pretty damn cool, you know. And then there's all sorts of cave drawings. You know, why would they do this? Is this just their form of modern art? You know, back in the cave, quote unquote, caveman times. You know, look a lot like some of the grays that we would see, perhaps. You know, it's all very curious, and you know, it's all over the entire globe in every single history. It's the same stories over and over and over again.
It is, and it goes on and on and on. And Angry Squirrel Production says, are angels in the Bible really alien visitors? In my humble opinion, I do believe that's true to some extent. I think the truth has been covered up and layered and rewritten so many times that we're only given little tiny breadcrumbs to go by. And we take that and we work together and we try to figure out the truth from there.
Bayshore's Roof and Cleaning says we are in disclosure right now. Yeah, it feels like it's underway. And I think the reality is going to really blow people's minds. You know, some people that are maybe a little bit more fundamentalist, especially in you know, their mindset, you know, will be in a complete state of denial. It's it's obvious there's different beings that have been around us all the time. And, it's like I move away for a while from a particular mythology. And then when I look at it again, like, today we're going to talk about, let me head over this way. Let's see. Okay. So, we're going to talk about the Tuatha Dé Danann and the Fomorians, and how this is exactly the same mythos that we're seeing time and time again. And we're talking Ireland, right? Irish myth. It's the same mythos that we're getting all around the globe. It really is. It's the same thing as the Olympians and the Titans. So the Tuatha Dé Danann, the people of the goddess Danu, named for the goddess Danu, a mother goddess. They're the fifth race to conquer Ireland. They are believed to have been prehistoric deities who have been anthropomorphized. And so, this is the whole thing. We look at it, we were taught, in our colleges and, our history classes, well, what they did was they're just personifying nature. They're taking the forces of nature, like Zeus, is the power of lightning and that type of thing. He never really existed. He just, typifies that power. And, it's I don't think that's the case. I think there's a lot more to this. And so this is really interesting. Were they Irish gods or aliens or what? And so this gets into the story of it. And for those of you that aren't familiar with it, it's really fascinating. Irish history is really interesting. And who are we really? Now, I have, the percentage has been changing, but roughly about a third of my background is Irish. And it's fascinating just to look at these legends. So as this author is saying, this is an Irish Central. When they came to live in Ireland, it didn't take them long to fall in love with its misty landscape and scattered ancient ruins. They drew me in. I could understand that. I felt at once connected and intrigued. Leaving behind the realms of accepted Irish history, I plugged into the shadowy domain of Irish mythology. And that was where I first encountered the Tuatha Dé Danann. And I know that's not exactly how you're supposed to say it, but it's fascinating. So the stories of these beings were passed down through the ages into legend via the ancient oral tradition of the poets. Later, Christian monks began assembling and recording them in an effort to produce a history for Ireland. But also recognize that is where things get screwed up, because they have an agenda. They have an agenda to make it fit their belief system. And again, Catholicism and Christianity has tried to control the mind of the people. And that's what Constantine the Great did. When he said, Christianity is spreading like wildfire. If you can't beat them, you might as well join them, but let's create a version that's going to work for us and allow us to control them. And so that's what happened. And we can see that throughout history. And then what happens is they also have hidden so much of the myths and the legends and the history of all these different people. And, happened here in Ireland. It happened over here in North America with the Native Americans that were here, who obviously ended up being all herded onto some of the worst land in reservations, and their belief systems, crushed, and they had to be converted again. And it's all about control is really what it boils down to, and it's all about hiding the true history as well. So who were they? Who were they? And so you pronounce them Tuatha Dé Danann, and it's translated as the tribe of Danu. Scholars are agreed that Danu was the name of their goddess. Most probably, this one goes into Anu, Anan. However, that's unproven. But it is interesting, too, because there is actually a Danu in the Hindu mythology. And, as we're going to see, there is a lot of actually similarities between the Irish and the Vedic systems and belief systems, and even words between Celtic and some of the Hindi Sanskrit words. So they were a race of godlike people gifted with supernatural powers who invaded and ruled Ireland over 4,000 years ago. So that's interesting, right? So we're looking at 2000 BC. We're right in the time of the Anunnaki. And so is this an Anunnaki group? And of course, they knew, Anunnaki, perhaps, is this again none other than another branch of the Anunnaki moving on out? And Keith says tribe of Dan. So is that again, now if we look at it biblically, if you're talking 4,000 years ago, you're talking prior to King David. It's all fascinating, putting them all together. Raven, good to see you, brother.
Yeah, it is. It's all curious when they put all these stories together and they write and rewrite history, and then they come in and they take over society and tell us how to run stuff, and you just never know what's the truth. I mean, I would love to know. I think for me, I'll always go back to how do I know where to go if I don't know where I've been? And it's really important to me to find out as much information as possible. And I do think we're kind of running into a really slow kind of disclosure here with certain things, which is a little relieving, but it's a little frustrating also because I can never get enough disclosure. There's never enough.
Yeah, most definitely. So, this is fascinating stuff. And, at some point I'm going to go deeper in and start doing some serious comparisons, actually writing stuff down and cross-referencing. I shared with you guys back when I was like, I was around 20. I was going to church constantly with my best friend, and he was always dragging me, at first to go. And then, I was doing the Bible study thing. Then I got so deep in that nobody had answers for all the stuff I was pulling up, so then it all got to be, well, you just have to, accept it's a divine mystery. And of course, I'm not going to accept anything because, obviously we could be misled. So I started to, actually handwrite, books of the Old Testament, a lot of the prophetic ones, just to commit them to memory. And also comparing as many different versions as possible, and just found so much stuff that most people don't recognize that's in there. And things like Deuteronomy 32:8, which just reads exactly like Greek mythology about the Olympian gods having their councils. It's exact same stuff going on, and this is all around the globe. We find these same things. So interesting too, when we really look into this group, and you could view them almost like they're not elves, yet when we look at whatchamacallit, The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, those type of things, he's pulling out of these myths and kind of giving us this battle of good versus evil and all the different types of beings. So what you see in like the Lord of the Rings, where you see that there's humans, there's hobbits, human like little guys, there's elves, there's dwarves, and then there's also like orcs, and there's wizards, and all these different types of beings that were all living together at one time, kind of out in the open. And whether they are all ETs, whether we are some newer creation from some of their mixing, it appears to be obvious because every culture remembers a time when all these beings did live side by side out in the open.
Yeah, it would be nice if we could go back to where there's all kinds of different creatures that we could see on the same dimension living together. But right now, it seems like even just humans, and if we have a different belief system or something, a lot of us are pitted against each other. So I want to think that we would be ready for such a thing to merge the dimensions, but I don't know as a species like, I know this group is not hateful and we're very tolerant, but you step outside of us, sometimes people can be very scared, and fear can really rule a lot of people, and then other people end up getting hurt, and that's how that works. So I don't know if we're evolved enough to handle the dimensions merging. I would want to think so.
Yeah, it's just fascinating stuff to look at. And so when we get into this again, they were a race of godlike people gifted with supernatural powers because perhaps they had mastered certain technologies. And perhaps one of those technologies is, the ability to shapeshift. Think about it, think about the potential that would have. So according to an ancient document known as the Annals of the Four Masters, now this was compiled by Franciscan monks between 1632 and 1636. They say the Danann ruled from 1897 BC until 1700 BC, a short period indeed, in which to have accumulated such fame, 200 years. They were said to have originated from 4 mythical northern cities, Morias, Gorias, Phalias, and Phineas, possibly located in Norway. Interesting again. Obviously, if we're looking at, blue eyes or green, blonde or redheads, this is what we keep getting associated with these beings. So the Book of Invasions, which was compiled in 1150, claims in a poem that they came to Ireland riding in flying ships, surrounded by dark clouds. Well, didn't we just see that? Where was that one? No, that was earlier, wasn't it? There. Clouds. Dark clouds, perhaps. Flying ship. Interesting. So, here's the artwork that's talking about that stuff. This all goes together. All of it goes together. And then later annals said that it wasn't flying ships, they came in ships on the sea. But the earlier ones say they came in flying ships. And we've talked all about the Vimanas. Again, well known in the Hindu texts that the gods, they flew around in these flying ships and they actually battled with each other. So, one of the things that I want to ask you guys now, if Earth is in reality some sort of zone where multiple races could have experiments going on at the same time, do their own thing with genetic stock, can't outright, none of them are allowed, maybe it's some sort of agreement that none of them are allowed to come straight in and just take over, but occasionally apparently wars break out because there are so many descriptions of battles going on amongst the gods. Maybe we are in a time of a little bit of a truce, so to speak, and they can manipulate us to do things for them, but they can't directly come down and just do it. What do you think about that line of thinking?
Well, I think that karma always has to come into play at some point, and I do believe that there are entities that hold the karma, maybe in the Vedas or something to that effect. And I think there's some balancing that has to happen, and I don't think that they're allowed to come into our reality and change our ability to have free will. What do you think about that free will thing?
I think there's something to it. That's why I think that they manipulate. I think that's why, if we look at the legends, there was a time when, the temple was just, the house of God, the house of the local god. That's where he lived, or maybe she, and, in a lot of the Sumerian writings, it's very clear. I mean, they stocked it for him. Food and drink, and perhaps the most beautiful maidens, also were all given to them. And, those gods, they planned the battles. And we see, from the Sumerian legends again, too, that they fought with each other. And again, Anunnaki means those from who the heavens came. So not necessarily one race. It could be multiple races going on, all doing their experimentations. And perhaps this is something that's being monitored by more of a galactic UN, and it's like you got to all play semi-nice. But if we are the locals that are here, if they could get us to do their bidding, and maybe go attack each other, perhaps that's part of how they get around that. So it's really fascinating stuff. And Raven, I'm gonna see when he could come on and talk, because Raven's actually he's written many books, and he has a lot of background. He's spent most of his life, like me, researching these things. And he's a wealth of wisdom and very interesting person to talk to. And I saw David Lewis was in the house as well, and Jason says, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. I agree. I think most people don't realize that at the top, it's not humans controlling things, and we are being controlled, most definitely.
Well, I go back to thinking about the planets being the gods and their control over us, because they do carry a vibration. And I think there's a bit of a difference between destiny and fate. Like if you're born under a certain planetary arrangement, you're going to be pulled and sort of shoved and coerced to do certain things rather than others, and that sort of creates our personality and who we are and what we're about and what we're more likely to do because of that vibration that certain planet carries. I mean, I think the planets are the gods.
See, so that's where, again, I think that there's a lot of a push to make us think one way or another. Everything's black and white. It's either or, but it doesn't necessarily have to be either or. It can be all of the above in different ways. So yeah, we were talking about consciousness. Everything is consciousness. Everything is. So when we're looking at the sun, in some sense, you could say that's really a truer God, in that it is something that's obviously much larger than any one of us. And it is supporting way more life than any one of us, although each one of us has, billions and billions of different forms of life living inside of us. So we are a universe to them. If you study the microbiome, truly we are gods in a sense, because all these things are depending on us, to for their life, for their existence, exactly, again. But at the same time, when you anthropomorphize things, and I think it gets really, really confused. So I do think that the planets, I think the sun, every single star, it has consciousness, and those, because of the immensity of them supporting so much more life, they probably are higher and more advanced than we are on our journey of soul evolution, as our souls evolve, or our spirits evolve. So I agree, and I think all that's kind of gotten confused and jumbled. So it's not like an either or, there's both, there's both going on. And so some of the benevolent beings in mythology really are probably the sun, and other planets and other stars as well. So there is that, but then there's also most definitely a physical, real component that's been here as well. And obviously has manipulated those of us on the surface of this planet, because there probably are a lot of people inside the planet as well. So, it's really fascinating. Well, one thing that's clear is that these beings, obviously, all these different types of beings have to be close enough related to shared genetic material, because that apparently is always going on, always going on. And this is just fascinating. So they came in flying ships, and then the later versions changed that to sailing ships. But the original legends were flying ships that happened to be just like dark clouds. And now, what did they look like? Well, they looked very different to the smaller, dark native peoples of Ireland at the time. So the original people in Ireland at that time were darker skinned and shorter. The Danann are generally described as very tall with red or blonde hair, blue or green eyes, and pale skin. There again, we are looking at your typical Nordic alien types.
Yeah, I don't know too much about those Nordics, but they're sure curious, with the blue eyes and the blonde hair, and very beautiful. And it was really strange because I went to the store the other day to get a bottle of wine for happy hour, and someone told me that my friend had stopped by, and I don't hang out with anyone in this town, and they said it was a blonde. It was a tall blonde, kind of middle-aged person, and they said they were my friend, and they gave him a bracelet, which is really weird. And then you said maybe it was one of these guys, and so I don't know, it was probably just someone common. But I have had dreams about these beings, and this one is very kind and benevolent, and I believe this one's very connected to you. I think this is a lot like your higher self, and then this one, of course, has a higher self, and on up it goes up and up and up the ladder here. So now, okay, so these are abductions, and I've had a little experience with that too that I don't like to talk about too much, but here you go.
So there again, some examples. This is Betty Andreasen, who was taken, saw lots of other humans in like test tubes and stasis. Like you see here, I've talked about her multiple times. There were grays. There were all sorts of different types of aliens. This little guy right there, I've seen him before. When I was 7, he came several times. And, but the ones that were controlling it all were these tall ones. These were the elders. She called them the elders. Now, their bodies of light took on physical forms. So they could change. And that's Betty there. So they could change and manipulate things. And, again, 8-9 feet tall. These are pretty typical. This is what we are seeing. And we talked about Adama at Telos inside the inner earth. He is supposed to be a Lemurian. People that survived the destruction of Lemuria and went inside the planet to survive and have a very, very high culture in there. Nuclear quantum lasers is in the house.
Hey, nuclear quantum lasers, pew, pew, pew. So, yeah, so these, you said they're from Lemuria, which brings me back to another time when you were running energy on me, and then I did bring up Lemuria, and this is kind of like, I like confirmation sometimes, because I didn't know that this was Lemuria connected, and I connected that a long time ago with this guy. So it's really curious how we can channel these entities and these consciousnesses and everything. I wish I was a little better at it, but I think my emotions are still a little too squirrely to actually pick out the vibration and be able to translate it. But I'm getting there. This is just also curious. I do like the channeled information. There's a lot of wisdom there.
So, it's fascinating and to me very obvious as we, go through, look at all these things that interconnect. There are millions of people that have had abduction scenarios, and millions. It's in the millions. It's probably even higher than millions. How many people really have been abducted, especially over the course of the years. And then as we see all this religious iconography, it's just it's showing, and these are ancient. These are going from 1200, 13, 1400 AD. There's just so much evidence of everything going on. And we talk about the Greek gods up in the clouds watching us all the time. And now we're talking about the Tuatha Dé Danann. So, interestingly, archaeology has unearthed evidence all around the world of small colonies of red-haired people from the same period as the Tuatha Dé Danann's arrival in Ireland. Yeah, we were talking about that. There's myths of red-haired giants everywhere. everywhere. Excavation in Xinjiang province, China, has revealed mummies of red and blonde-haired people living around 4,000 years ago. Extremely well-preserved Egyptian mummy of noble man, Yoya C., 1400 BC, show he has blonde hair and Nordic features, as did his wife, Thuya. She was also Tutankhamun's great-grandmother. So very, very interesting as well. And so in order to win supremacy over Ireland, the Dé Danann fought against their existing ruling tribe, the Firbolg, in the First Battle of Moytura. During this encounter, the Danann High King, Tuatha Dé lost his arm. He survived but lost his position, as a king could not be seen as anything less than whole if he was going to bring his people continued success. So obviously flesh and blood if you lose an arm. In an intriguing turn of events, the physician Dion Kecht replaced the lost limb with a fully functioning arm of silver. Well, at least it appeared to be silver. And then later, Dion Kecht's son Miak, also a physician, caused the skin and flesh to grow over the metal arm. That's a hell of a legend, is it not? Thus whole again, kingship was restored to Nuada. Interesting, that reminds me of Star Wars, right? Luke loses his hand, and then he finds out that Darth Vader lost his hand the same way, So again, it's just fascinating. And they had magic talismans. They had a sword of light, lightsaber, perhaps. I mean, come on. Well, this is where a lot of these myths come from. I mean, well, our modern myths like Star Wars, they come from these things. So it's obvious that we're talking about beings that were flesh and blood. And it's just fascinating. And I'll go more into this on some upcoming videos. I just wanted to touch on this because, these beings fought also. The Fomorians, who happen to be the bad-looking, ugly giants. And, again, these are Fomorians. Again, it's the same story, like whether we look at the biblical story of the Nephilim and everything, whether we look at so many of the native legends, there's giants in it everywhere. Then there's some giants that are more like your what we think of as Pleiadian or Nordic looking giants. And then there's some that are not quite so handsome, to say the least. So it's fascinating. The Fomorians, destructive giants of Irish legend, bloodthirsty. Yeah, these legends are universal. It's everywhere. And the same things. They were a race of supernatural giants in Irish mythology. And by some accounts, they're one of the earliest races to have invaded and settled in Ireland. Often described as monstrous, hideous-looking creatures, they were sometimes said to possess the power over certain natural phenomena again. And, it's pretty wild because these things all go together. They really, really do. Every culture, it's the same myths. Everywhere we look, they're the same legends. Whether we're talking Zeus and, the fighting the Titans, and like Kronos and Rhea, out of whom the Olympian gods came. And again, we could say they're personifications of natural phenomena. Are they really? Are these really just legends that are etched in our memories? Our genetic memories, perhaps, of a time when there were all sorts of beings on this planet at one time out in the open, intermingling.
I know, going back to the part where the guy was given a new arm and grew skin over it, that just tells me that they had some seriously good medical technology then. And that goes to tell me that we're not the pinnacle of modern technology today. We have a long ways to go, but that information is being stored somewhere. I know somewhere, probably deep in a place that I'm not going to even mention, is all the information we need to know to stop the aging process. I do believe we can stop aging. There's a way, and certain beings, I believe, know how to do it.
I see soul revivers in the house. Good to see you, brother. So, like he says, don't forget, just like Orion has a light faction and the Arcturians have some war and power-hungry factions, so the Reptilians have a small light faction. Yeah, and that's the yin and yang of everything as well. There's some light and darkness and light. It's always the case. You can't say every being in a certain race is necessarily evil, though there are tendencies. Just like I would be fine anytime jumping into a pool full of dolphins. At the same time, I wouldn't jump into a pool full of sharks, because they have a tendency to eat anything that's in their way. It's just one of those things. And, I see a lot of chatting going on in the chat room, and it's good if we could keep it all civil with no swearing and, try to keep it rated PG, with everything that's going on in YouTube land as well. So the Fomorians again, and okay, so just as our brother was saying there, it may be mentioned, however, that good-looking Fomorians may also be found in some of the ancient sources. One of these, for example, is Tuatha, a king of the Fomorians who is described as handsome and golden-haired. So not everybody looked like this handsome guy, carrying his club, his nice spikes. And that is the same case with what we were talking about with the Devas and the Asuras. There were some Asuras that were not necessarily that bad, and there were some Devas that not always were that good. So, it's interesting to look at it there. And, the question is, has any of this really stopped, or is it still going on and we just don't even, we don't totally recognize it? And there's another myth here, and talking about Tuatha, and a different myth here, was also different from other Fomorians in terms of his personality. Tuatha is described in Irish mythology as being interested in justice. For example, when his son Bress wanted to go to war with the Tuatha Dé Danann, another supernatural race, Tuatha refused to join him, as he reckoned that the cause for war was unjust. By contrast, other Fomorians are portrayed as warlike and bloodthirsty. In general, stories say the Fomorians took pleasure in waging war, and when they conquered other races, they would proceed to enslave them. This happened, for instance, to the Nemeds, who attempted to invade Ireland after the Fomorians. This happened as well to the Tuatha Dé Danann during the reign of Bress. The oppressive rule of this king resulted in the Second Battle of Mag Tuired, during which the Tuatha Dé Danann succeeded in freeing themselves from the tyranny of Bress. And so, interesting, and you see a depiction of them. They kind of look like the elvish people that we see in Lord of the Rings, in The Hobbit. Very interesting, and that's what Tolkien took it from. He took it from these legends. So these battles have been going on forever, and we just happen to find ourselves in the middle of them. I think that's kind of my take on this.
Well, I think that, ultimately we're separated of a veil of forgetfulness, but I don't think there is a veil. I think it's all right here. I think we can see everything we need to see, except for we don't recognize it for what it is. Like those rocks we were looking at yesterday looked like a spine. Most people thought it looked like a spine. Yeah. And if we were only told the truth, perhaps it is a spine, that means there is no veil. And what we are looking at are all the gods and all the wars and all the things that were blasted apart. So everything is in front of our face, and now it's just history, and only a select few know the true history. That's kind of what I think sometimes.
So let me play this for you and tell me what you guys see. Is that not curious? Let's just go through that one more time. All right, so let's see. What do you guys think about that? Think about the technology that is truly out there. If beings, some beings are thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, maybe a million years ahead of us, it would be crazy to think of the technology that they would have. Very interesting stuff. Very, very interesting stuff. Saranoia, you said it was buffering. You couldn't really see that. It looked like a sun flare to me. It's perfectly round. See, that's the thing, Exactly. This Renee says, they say the sun is a portal. Most definitely. I don't think the sun is exactly what we think it is. Interesting comments. It's perfectly round what goes through here. And yeah, I do think the sun is a portal. There's been things like this seen coming through. Of course, if you watch Dr. Albers, she'll show you things about that size just simply attached to it and, draining energy apparently. So perhaps, they're refueling. It's just a simple refueling of your ship right there. You're passing through the portal and then you attach in and you refuel. So, when the sun flare goes off, it has a different look to it. Here you can see this is perfectly round, spherical inside it. And it shoots off. And then another perfectly round one is clearly visible. See, right there, that's a circle inside. It's very interesting. So ships passing on through, perhaps, a portal. And that would be a interesting thing to see. Romulan craft. Yeah, most definitely interesting stuff. And it is about raising our frequency. It really, really is. And, the sun is shooting off so much hydrogen out into space all the time, H2O. And we have life. So, the sun generates life. And let's see, where were we? Okay, so we're talking all about the Fomorians. So, again, the same legends we see time and time and time again. Legend in northern Nevada of, again, a tribe, Paiute tribe, burning alive some giants in a cave. And, that was on our list. We'll probably go check that out and do a video from there when we go visit your sister up that way. And again, it's the same thing. And then when the giants came rushing out of the cave on fire, they just shot them, dead. So we have these legends we could talk about from all over the world. It's all the same. And what's fascinating is we're connected. And we are connected. And again, I think the Vedic sources are some of the best stuff, because I think it's, like I was showing you, just one of the Vedic books, the Ramayana. The Ramayana itself is the size of the Bible, and the Ramayana is just one. There's hundreds of books. So, there's a wealth of information. The Puranas get into such detail of these wars amongst the gods that it's just amazing. And then there's the Celtic Vedic connection, so again, it's another coincidence that there is a deity in the Vedic culture called Danu, just like the Celtic. And, it's just fascinating to see this. There's so many parallels. And I've even talked about the biblical parallels that go on. There's multiple as well. So, it's just, we're so intertwined. Everything is so intertwined. Everything has been so twisted, and it's been drummed into our heads with the conditioning of learn the lies, memorize the lies, and then we get graded and judged on how well we memorize all the lies, because what they want us to do is not question the fake view of reality and our history that has been given to us. Because when we start putting things together, we get a much truer sense of what really has gone on in this world. And it's something they don't want us to know. But again, if they were not supposed to be so out in the open because of some sort of agreement, whatever it is, then they would obviously want to hide it. And of course, the powers that be, enjoy their lifestyle and want to maintain true control, complete control over this realm. And so obviously they will do whatever they can to maintain the status quo and keep us from learning the truth. There's some words that are very, very similar as far as Old Irish and Sanskrit. The legends, again, the same. And really, the legends go on. And we could make comparisons, as we were saying. Deuteronomy 32:8. It talks all about God being there and amongst the council of the gods. And basically, all of them have their own territories. But the God of the Bible, in this case, his land and his people, are those of Abraham's descendants. And so, but again, Abram, right? And then we have Brahma, and then Sarasvati and Sarah. There's a connection there. When somebody dies in Judaism, there's a time period where you're sitting Shiva. And Shiva, again, God, one of the duties is of basically destruction, but really change is what it is. But it's just so fascinating that there's so many connections that most people aren't aware of. And it just goes on and on. Different parallels, exact parallels with different myths. Some words are the same. Celtic cosmology is parallel to Vedic cosmology as well. And again, you have to wonder, is that because maybe people were coming back after, this horrible cataclysm that hit us, as we're probably talking about the Younger Dryas cataclysm, 12,000 years ago. But then there was another one about 5,000 years ago as well that wasn't quite as global, but still very significant.
Yeah, and I would really, really love to meet some of these gods. I think they're pretty awesome, and I don't know if it'll happen in our lifetime, but I do believe they've come back to help humanity time and time again. And I feel like with our awakening, it could happen, because there are so many of us waking up and understanding that, all the lies that we were told in school, they were just to keep us asleep, which isn't fair. And then going back to the sun, and the sun being plasma, and if we're plasma beings, then, to me, it makes sense to not really worship the sun, but the sun is our life force. That's our core. That's our everything. And, the other beings, apparently, obviously, they know what it is. It's life.
And, again, there's some that are thought to be extremely benevolent and come and help us after, the cataclysms happen. There's a lot of talk about toothpaste, and I did a video on that a while ago. Like for us, I've used just basically coconut oil, baking soda, a little bit of peppermint essential oil, and a little bit of tea tree essential oil. And you can throw clove in there too if you have any pain issues. Cloves is also just very anti-parasitic as well. Works out really well. Soul Reviver was saying Blue Kachina is the sun now. I shared with you too. I have a friend that died. I talked about her several times. She was dead for 35 minutes. They toe tagged her. We're going to take her down to the morgue and came back. And we were watching a sunset on the beach in Florida, and she was staring at the sun. And I said, what you staring at? And she said, the aliens with the big blue orbs. I said, what are they doing? Are they good or bad? She said, no, they're good. She said they're doing something to the sun because otherwise it wouldn't be good for us. They're making it so basically we wouldn't get killed. They wouldn't. The sun is changing, and when I see those big orbs coming out of it, like I was showing you before, that's exactly what she described, but she saw them as being blue, and she saw them as doing something to help mitigate the changes in the sun, to give us more time and all.
Hi, Sarah. Yeah, Tom's toothpaste also has children's. I don't know if you've already tried that. Just go down the line. All you can do is really, even Walmart, Target, those places, if you have a place, go down the line and just, hopefully they're not too expensive. You can try one after the other. But Michael and we make with coconut oil and, like you said, baking soda, and it's really good. And maybe you can get somewhere with that. If nothing else, just go fluoride free and pray that he'll go for it, and explain to him too. He's 8 years old. He knows it's better for his brain. Maybe he'll turn around for you.
And there again, if we're not eating a lot of simple sugars, you're not going to have any problem in the first place with your teeth, really, because it's the stuff that's just pure garbage. Like all your sodas that are going to rot your teeth at the same time too. So when you eat like whole foods, like we eat pretty much nothing but whole foods all the time, and you really won't have much of an issue as well. So, fascinating stuff. And, this gets you thinking about what are we seeing today. So over here, this you're seeing on Yahoo News, stationary UFO recorded over South Carolina ignites offbeat conspiracy theorists. And it didn't look stationary to me, but maybe it stayed put for a while. Comet-like object reportedly seen over South Carolina, found its way to YouTube, going viral. It looked like a lot what Dave Dobbs has shown. If you guys know, Steve over at WSO, his friend Dave Dobbs has a channel, and it almost looks like it's got almost like two heads, kind of, and a fiery golden tail. This is the original video from Kimberly Jordan's channel, and I have the link for you guys. Let's give her a thumbs up. I didn't get permission, so I won't play it, but that's what this looks like to me. It looks just like, and I've seen this up in the sky too. I think it was when I was in Florida. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much for your support. We truly appreciate it.
Great show, great comments. Thank you, John. We appreciate it a ton.
So, to me, this is some sort of ship. I mean, it could be I don't think it's a meteor. I really don't. I think it's a ship of some sort. That would be my guess. And I'll give you guys the link as always, so you could go check it out yourself. But that looks just like the Dave Dobbs object that we've seen so many times. So, shape-shifting reptilians and other conspiracy theories. Now, this is 6 years old, this article, and there was a poll done then, 6 years ago. 4% of Americans, right, or about 12 million out of the 327 million, believe at the top of the totem pole are shape-shifting reptilians. 4%. Wow. So, 6 years ago, I bet you we passed 5%. Do you think we're heading towards 10%? When do we get to the point where people, are starting to think that this, en masse?
Well, my daughter, she's 11, and I haven't talked to her too much about shape-shifting reptilians, but I asked her if she had one superpower, if she could choose one superpower, what would it be? And she chose to be a shapeshifter.
That's very cool. Holly Noel says, listen to the meteors. Yeah, I've done that before. And some are ships. And, I think there's a lot of things we've been taught that are completely wrong, just wrong, and a lot has been told to us in order to just keep us, in falsehoods. Vril lizards. Yes, most definitely. Ships all around. They are. We see when we haven't gone out in the desert now in a while at night and just stargaze, but man, the stuff you see out there, it's incredible. There's so much going on here. Now, a lot of people have seen a tremendous trail of satellites. They're calling them satellites. And I have some MUFON reports down here a little bit farther. A lot of people are seeing tons of ships right now, and they're seeing ships. I don't think they're all satellites just happening to go by. I saw one video that they were saying was satellites going by in a line, but it was like, no, they look like ships that are going in a formation.
Yeah, exactly. I do believe they're up there, and when we would watch the stars, you could zone in on a little orb, and then the little orb would like shoot across the sky and then stop, and it just reminds you of when you're watching Star Trek or something and they do warp speed. Yeah.
Most definitely. And Tom says he sees it all the time with his telescope. Reptilians have telepathy. Yeah, I've experienced that, honestly. I had a freaky experience not too long ago with that. It was really weird. But, and that gets you into the reptilian thing too. I do think some, as Soul Reviver was saying, are not necessarily evil. Like when we look at the legends of the Nagas, as opposed to the Draco, the Nagas are not necessarily evil. To be approached with caution and respect, most certainly. And we feel, well, you felt it when we were down in that area where I was showing you guys the photos. And I don't have them up over here, do I? No. You got an impression of definite reptilian energy.
Oh God, yes. Yeah, it's really a twisted energy, and it's just not very nice, and it's like your gut sinks, and you feel a little hopeless, kind of depressed, and oh my God, there you go.
So, do you know how many videos are out there of Nancy Pelosi shifting? And so, I mean, this one, look at her eyes. There's just too many of them. Do you think that they're all doctored? That's pretty wild. Because it's like, it changes. Her face changes. They're in positions of power. When David Icke first came out, I thought, oh my God, I'll listen to this all day long because it's just so much fun. Although I didn't believe it. I really didn't. I thought it was a joke. 25 years later, I'm not so sure. Look at that. I don't know. That's kind of weird. And then here's another one of kind of like a morphing and a changing going on. Here you can see her face is kind of changing. So is she really a shape-shifting reptilian? Yeah. What about those eyes? That freaks Cindy out.
No, that one is sick. Only because I've seen that in people. Those shark eyes, those no soul, I am dead, but I'm still walking zombie type thing. That's just so gross.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think about that? Yeah, she's rippling. Some of these politicians, I don't believe they're completely human. They're most definitely some are. I don't know. Obviously, we know the situation with the world and how it's just been one big war after another. Old Rider, you got one where Trump is shifting. It's pretty wild. You know, they're, and as Fifth World's talking about, you know, the Nagas were, again, thought more of, I think that's where the legends of like the benevolent dragons come from. You know, they're different. Now, it's thought that the Nagas were here before us. They were here before us. And, you know, and they're definitely different than the Draco.
Yeah.
So yeah, and of course we got the Queen.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't she a darling? Look at that.
Look at her smile at the little children.
She's gonna go off and have her tea and raw bloody meat.
Yeah, yeah.
I was gonna say tea and crumpets, but no.
No.
Oh man. Yeah, went all Draco. Bingo, you got it, Susan. Definitely. Holly Noel, I think you are touching on a lot of truth there. Yeah, you know, and again, so for me, I totally think it extends into both parties. I don't think, you know, I think both parties, again, it's two sides of the same coin, you know, and they're both controlled. And then we have this one, a real classic, and, you know, the Bushes, I think, made me as sick as any politicians that ever walked the planet. So what are they really hiding? What do they really have going on in their DNA? Interesting stuff. 10 things you should know about the reptilian conspiracy theory. There's a good looking guy for you. So 2 schools of thought where the reptilians come from. Some believe they evolved here on Earth, left Earth after they mastered intergalactic travel and then returned. Others believe their home planets in the Draco constellation. Supposedly they came to Earth thousands of years ago, shared the Earth with people, then they either decided or were forced to go undercover and hid themselves from our reality. They also started to interbreed with humans by altering our DNA, similar to the way that people alter a computer code. Now, you know, the thought that David Icke says is they altered our DNA enough so they could basically overtake us. You might want to say possess, overshadow us, control us. Mm-hmm. You know, I think here what you're looking at is 2 different things. I think the Nagas were here and the Draco came here. You know, that's what I get from everything I've studied. And it's interesting, it goes into the reptilian brain thing. I was trying to do more research on that. That's one of those subjects where you can't find a lot of info on, because maybe there is something really to this. And, of course, we were talking about the Rh negative thing we've talked about in great detail. So according to Icke, there's a hierarchy that when it comes to the reptilians. There's 2 classes, full-bloods and crossbreeds. Think about our vampire legends again. You guys ever see Underworld and how there's the aristocracy? You know, the aristocracy of the vampires, which is so superior to the mongrels, right? The Mongol, you know, it's exactly the same thing again, because I think that what they're alluding to is the reptilians there. Full-bloods are aware that they are reptilian, can change forms between their human exterior and their true reptilian skin. Also, the full reptiles are not wearing an actual physical disguise. Instead, their human shell is created through vibrations that can alter the human mind. So your brain just thinks it sees a human. It's similar to how the aliens disguise themselves in John Carpenter's cult classic, They Live. Do you guys remember that? That was so cool. This explains why reptilians are 5 to 12 feet tall, but wear a human-sized disguise. They don't actually shrink in size. Our brains just register them as normal human size. Now, he says because it's impossible to physically change. But no, I think that is something they have mastered. And, here's the trailer for They Live. And it was fun. This was a fun flick. And this came out in 1988. And there's our boy, Rowdy Piper. And, coincidentally, I met him at the Hard Rock Cafe in Toronto in Skydome just after he got done filming this. And, we actually had beers together, and he was like one of the coolest guys ever. And he said to me, this movie, they're telling the truth. I kid you not. He believed that. He really, really did believe that. And, he was a great guy. I really enjoyed having a couple beers with him up there.
Yeah, I do believe that he knows something. And, going back to altering our DNA and computer code, like, I know that hackers do know how to make backdoors into computers, so you can go into someone's computer and control it and watch and see what it does. And if you don't like what it's doing, you can take control of that computer and do it yourself. So in that sense, it's very much the same thing as far as computer code hacking goes. And then it makes you wonder about, AI, at the top. Is it AI? I don't know. Everything is just so mathematical. It's awesome and beautiful and wonderful and scary.
Yeah, most definitely. So, at the top of the pecking order are the Dracos, in particular the Royal Dracos. And those are winged albino. They have wings and they're albino reptiles, basically. Then there's the reptoids, who do not have wings, brown and green skin. The reptoids are more like soldiers and scientists and are responsible for secret government programs and bases. And then how to spot one. So some of the general characteristics of the reptilians in disguise and people with reptilian DNA is they are usually Caucasian, have piercing eyes that are green, hazel, sometimes blue, can also change color. They also have low blood pressure and unexplained scars. So I guess they're saying Putin is one. Now, there are those that think Putin is fighting them at the same time. And it's interesting that there are some prophecies that say the hope of the world is Russia. I know there were some Catholic prophecies that were thought to come from Mary that had said that, Mother Mary. Interesting stuff. Have a hard time expressing love, incredibly smart, have a love for space and science, but kind of cold emotionally. Yeah. There's another suspected reptilian, Of course, the families, the Rockefellers and Rothschilds, the House of Windsor. Many of the presidents of the United States were thought to be reptilian, including Bill Clinton, Hillary, of course. And she is supposedly higher in the food chain than Bill in the reptilian hierarchy. Obama, both President Bushes. And, it's so many people are all interrelated. According to Ancestry.com, George W. Bush and Obama are 11th cousins. Dick Cheney's his 9th cousin. Other blood relatives are Abraham Lincoln, Marilyn Monroe, Pocahontas, Hugh Hefner, John Kerry, Vlad the Impaler, and Princess Diana. That means that possibly all those people are actually reptilian as well. And they're not just in the government. They're in other spots like banking, obviously the world's royalty, and then entertainers like Bob Hope, Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie as well. And so, it's so fascinating. I'm going to hand this off to you because I just want to bring up two little things.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I was watching the chat and, some people, I think someone mentioned if they have narcissistic tendencies and, oh, yes, do they ever? But narcissistic doesn't always mean bad. It just means that, you kind of favor exactly what you want and you'll do whatever it takes to get what you want. And a lot of people don't even know they have these severe narcissistic tendencies until you learn about it. Once you learn about it, then a lot of people change.
And so you guys know Vlad the Impaler was like cousins to the royal family. The queen and, of course, the prince and all that. Elizabeth Bathory, she's the blood countess. She used to literally bathe in the blood of virgin girls. And here's a picture of her in 1585. And again, she's of royal blood, from Hungary. Now it's in Slovakia. And again, she was related to Vlad the Impaler, and she's also related to the British royal family. So you can't make this stuff up. So you really can't. I mean, this all goes together.
It does. It all kind of fits together like a really strange puzzle piece, and that's part of our job here, is to pull it out of the closet of, the underwritings and stick it out there for everybody to see, because I think, as many perspectives as we can get on this information, the better, because there's truth here. There's absolute truth here. And it's been chopped up, diced up, and then thrown out there for us to hopefully we'll never find out. I think that's their hope.
And then we have Vlad the Impaler, again related to the British royal family, and very bloodthirsty, most definitely ruthless. He used to sit there and eat his dinner while everybody was getting impaled over here, all the people that were captives, and he was actually revered by his people, because he did stop a huge Muslim invasion of the area, and he stopped it because people were terrified to battle him because of what he did to anybody that he captured. As you can see from this old woodcut, he had no problems dining on dinner while people were being chopped up into little bits and pieces. And again, he basically was a cousin to the British royal family. So you cannot make this stuff up. This is who these bloodlines, they're the ones that have ruled the world. And let's see what we got here. Renee is a casting director and filmmaker. Interesting. So yeah, you can't make this up. This is real. This is real. This is part of the history. And so blood. Now, we talked about the Rh negative thing as well. So, this is interesting. It's believed about 4800 BC, crossbreeds emerged from the mountains of Turkey, Iran, and Kurdistan. And they started the early civilizations of Sumer, Egypt, Babylon, and Indus Valley. I don't agree with all the conjecture, and everybody has their own opinion on how things started. But following the migration and movements of people is fascinating. Now, we talked about Tartaria, right?
Tartaria, yeah.
Yeah, fascinating subject. What is the truth? And just with the movements of people and the different interplay between all these ancient peoples, I still feel like there is some misdirection going on with the whole Sumerian thing. But of course, we could tell, that so many of the biblical stories were just taken from stories that were 2,000 years older from the Sumerian legends. And of course, Rh negative is a big thing. And, this is where the term blue blood comes from, right? And, okay, there's so many passages in the Bible, according to the serpent. Again, who is the serpent? And, there's so much stuff that we could uncover. And, of course, the interbreeding, Genesis 6, and all that's just a tiny, tiny little snippet compared to what's out there, especially when we start going and looking at all the comparative mythology, and so you have like little snippets that are pieced together because they didn't want to give too much out in the open.
Susan Donahue, bless you. Michael Cindy, so grateful for you and our EEA family. Oh my gosh, I am grateful for you guys too, because you guys are a huge part of my sanity. And, I love you all so, so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. We completely love your support and the support of everybody out there. Just seeing your guys' names on a regular basis, it's so uplifting. Seeing those little icons Yeah, just so much love, and it's beautiful. The thing is, we need to recognize, who the real enemy is, and it's really, it's the system, and it's the power control grid that keeps us locked into this. That's why we have to get above and beyond party politics and recognize the whole system needs to be totally redone. And so, this is just fascinating. So you see, now the Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterwards. So we'll go back. Genesis 6:1. So when human beings began to increase in number on the earth, daughters were born into them. The sons of God saw the daughters of humans were beautiful, and they married any of them that they chose. So the sons of God were obviously physical because they could marry, they could have kids. And really, when we start looking at some of the oldest translations, it's actually the sons of the gods. It's going back to exactly what we're talking about with the mythologies all around the world, They all say the same thing, the sons of the gods. Now, it doesn't mean that there is no one source or prime creator, however we want to view it. It just is saying that, this is the same mythology we're seeing over and over again. And obviously these beings can actually have physical babies with humans. And so then the Lord said, my spirit will not contend with humans forever, for they are mortal. Their days will be 120 years. Now, we have legends of people living 1,000 years, and cultures, again, globally, all around the world, and Methuselah, 969 years. So something was done here genetically to shorten us, our lifespans. Is that part of our scrambled DNA? Is that part of all the junk DNA, which is getting turned on now, and will our lifespans normally now go back to something like 1,000 years? There are sources that say that humans out there on other planets would live the equivalent in human years of 10,000 years with the technology that they have and the way we're supposed to be. But by keeping us in this shorter loop, this shorter karmic loop, the time we start to gain some wisdom, we're dying, and we have to start all over again and go through it again. So this is a great way to entrap souls when you think about it. The Nephilim were on earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God went to the daughters of humans and had children by them, had sex with them. Now, interestingly, they were the heroes of old, men of renown. Okay, so they were the heroes. They were the good guys? So are we talking Samson? Are we talking Hercules? Mm-hmm. These type of beings? I think so. And then the very next line talks about the flood and says, because wickedness was spreading and the Nephilim were there, then, God sent a flood to wipe them out. So interesting. And Ike says, again, this is evidence of interbreeding. And we see this. Remember, I was bringing up Eddie Andreasen. I mean, there's all these people up on the ships of all different nationalities and backgrounds, and some of them are not going back to Earth. They're going somewhere else. They're taking them somewhere else. There are some sources out there that say over 1 million humans every year get taken off planet and sent elsewhere, that there's this huge intergalactic slave trade going on. Some humans are used for food for some of the reptilians and other ones that would find humans a delicacy, and all fascinating stuff.
It is. And then you can get into loosh and whatnot. And there's a little part in the Bible, and I can't remember word for word, but it does talk about God making skins for Adam and Eve. And I'm just curious, are the skins he made for Adam and Eve the skins we sit in now? I don't think he would have killed animals and made skins. It's just all so curious. And then there's this guy.
Yeah. Do you guys remember this? To serve man. They are here to serve man. Yes. You remember this? This was wonderful. Mr. Chambers, don't get on that ship. The rest of the book, To Serve Man. It's a cookbook. Do you guys remember that? And so, Mr. Chambers finds himself locked up in a chamber on the ship, Interestingly enough, this is a tall alien that comes. They're going to offer us technology and everything. And so what's he doing? He's trying to get Mr. Chambers to eat because, he wants him plump and he likes a lot of marbling on his steak.
Oh, yummy. That's wonderful. I just love the Twilight Zone, too. That's terrific.
Most definitely. Yeah, exactly. Menacing muskrat. Plantagenet kings ruled England from 1154 to 1485. Most presidents and elites are related to this. You're right. Yep. Yeah. Oh, Sherry, you get that one always hit me too. Sherry says to serve man. What about the global warming one? Right. Yeah, it's like they're heading into the Earth is off its axis. It's spiraling in towards the sun. We're all going to burn up, and then at the end, the hero, I think it was a woman, wakes up and it's just the opposite. We're going out into space and we're all going to freeze to death.
Yeah, I know. So they can't keep their story straight. So it's up to us to sort of kind of look around and talk to each other and, ping things back and forth and try to figure out what makes more sense.
Yeah. So it's just so interesting. Book of Revelation, Satan is described as a serpent and a dragon. And he is cast down to earth with his angels. Now, Ike believes this is a Draco and his reptoids. To me, that makes sense, perhaps, when you think about it. So maybe we are in the times right now. We are being ruled by the Draco and the reptoids. And again, Nephilim is an ambiguous term. Those who have descended or the fallen ones. And so perhaps it's overly simplistic to think of these, beings as being fallen angels. I mean, what's an angel? Angel means messenger. That's all. It means messenger. But yet, are there what we consider angels, in the traditional sense, like beings of a very high order? I think that there are. So, I think a lot of things are just so confused and intertwined, and it's been done completely on purpose. As we've seen this a million times. This reptilian imagery all over the world, all over. This is a statue of a humanoid snake creature holding a baby right there that's kind of like suckling, and these are thousands of years old. Mesoamerica, winged serpent god called Quetzalcoatl, who has been equated with Hermes, Mercury, as well. The Egyptian god Apep is a god of chaos, depicted as a cobra, perhaps a naga. Of course, we have so many legends of dragons as well. Their connection to the Greys. Well, the Greys are just, they're worker bees, and they are used by many different types of beings as well. And then, of course, the Illuminati are the ones that, they're the human / maybe half-breed, component of it that control things here for them. And of course, we've gotten into the 13 royal families and all that. And so what's their goal? It's yeah, that's a pretty cute picture, isn't it?
Aw, it's charming.
Yeah. So why would they do it? Well, one belief is they need our gold. That's the whole Nibiru thing. The other thing is loosh. I mean, it's, again, the lower energies, lower vibrations, fear and suffering create tremendous energies that could be fed on. And, perhaps, there is some actual consumption, literal consumption of humans. And then perhaps there's most definitely an energetic component as well. So fascinating stuff, most definitely. Here is a PDF. This was approved for release back in 2001 from the CIA's reading room. And, it gets into evidence on UFOs and covers many cases where obviously they didn't have an explanation. At the end, their conclusion is pretty typical, that it would change society if people knew, that there are other beings here. It could, it's one of those things where you can't handle the truth. We know better than you, and I'll give you the link for that. So, it would be just too much for average people like you and I to handle. And, there is most definitely disclosure going on, guys. It's just a slow one, but it is coming. And then over here, this is from the National UFO Reporting Center, and a lot of different things going on, and talking about the satellites. People are seeing what is being called a ton of satellites up in space, and a whole trail of them up in space. Do they tend to go in a perfect line like this? I'll leave it up to you guys. Do we have any experts in the house? When do you see satellites going one after another? And there's some interesting encounters here. These people were camping. This is up in Gallipolis, Ohio. And basically, it was one of those situations where they saw something. It came over them, and the husband felt threatened. And so he had a 45 on him, and he put his hand on the 45 to pull it out of his holster, and he found he couldn't move, as if he just was stuck. And it just then eventually sped off and took off. But there's been so many cases where people get paralysis. And so, how many people out there have had sleep paralysis? And are you really being abducted or interfered with in some way?
I thoroughly believe we're being interfered with. It's just not a very nice thing to be done. And that used to happen to me quite often, although it slowed quite a lot. And I think it could have something to do with having a lower vibration. And, with all the crap that I used to eat and the medications they had me on it, I don't doubt one bit my vibration was pretty low. And, as I get healthier and as I eat better food and take care of myself and love myself, the vibration goes up, and it hasn't happened as bad. I do have nightmares, but the sleep paralysis they can't get me now.
And nuclear quantum lasers, I love Groot. Especially when he gets in one of those moods and he starts swearing so much. He's just hilarious. Groot's a great character. And actually, when we think about that movie, if you guys saw the last two of the Avengers, and basically time travel and that whole thing, and perhaps there being multiple realities going on in our world at all the time. Pretty interesting stuff. And again, they try to, they give us clues. They give us clues out there all the time. So you want to research UFOs, you can start with a new display at the National Archives Museum. And so you can become a UFO researcher, starting with a new display at National Archives Museum in recognition of the 50th anniversary of the end of Project Blue Book. The code name for the Air Force program that investigated UFO sightings, the National Archives Museum started displaying a selection of Project Blue Book records on Thursday. And, it's not just Blue Book. As we have the PDF on other research that we're just showing you. The truth is out there. Billy Meyer's UFO images. Do you guys think these are legit? If you're familiar with the Billy Meyer's Pleiarans, the Nazis had these back in these days. That was at 1942. This is right when the Nazis were working on all this. So, is it necessarily ETs? It might not be, because these saucers, this one's from 1976. These saucers were something the Nazis were using, and we have them probably now too, I'm sure, as, Operation Paperclip. So many Nazi scientists were taken into our country. And there you have a classic shot. So this one's of the, if you remember the X-Files, this is the one that Mulder had on the I Want to Believe poster. So do you believe these are the Pleiarans? Or do you think they're the Nazis, or do you think they're just fake? Interesting stuff.
No, I think all of this is real. It's definitely real, and it's, going to be part of the disclosure, and one day we're going to look back and And we're going to say, oh my gosh, I can't believe hardly no one believed me. And we're going to be the ones who are going to tell the stories. And because we do dig a little bit deeper, because we know, we can feel in the ether that most of this is BS, what they're feeding us out in mainstream. It's just not nice and it's not fair. And that's why I'm here, because I'm like you guys. I want to know the truth.
The truth is out there, but what is the truth, really? And we looked at this lenticular cloud. See a lot of those around Shasta. China has a huge alien hunting radio telescope. It's finishing its testing phases. So you got to wonder, how many of the governments of the world know exactly what's going on? Are perhaps some of the governments of the world, like China, are they perhaps being run by a different group? When we think of the Chinese dragons and their reverence for the dragons and dragon wisdom, I think they are referencing not the Draco, but I think they're referencing the Nagas, which perhaps still live in the inner earth. At least that's what the legends say. So, are they under the control of a different group than, say, the U.S. is and the Illuminati, or are they just another piece in the pie? There is a Chinese family that is one of the 13. And so over here, this is up in Washington State. What's that sound? Tell me what's happening. Loud booms, strange sounds. Now, we were talking about this yesterday, too. Lots of weird rumbling, weird sounds going on. Lots and lots. And, we experienced it, too. I don't know what it was. It sounded to me like I was kind of waiting for shaking. I was thinking it was going to be an earthquake, honestly. But we heard weird sounds when we were out in that area where we got the photos of what you guys seem to think is the spine of something. The way those rocks are all pieced together so perfectly, we're going to have to go back and do a little bit more detail there. Though, honestly, I didn't feel like staying there anymore. I just was kind of eager to get away from it. It didn't have a great vibe. And there was another area that had a really interesting thing that looked like a dinosaur, which I did a video on, not too far from there, a couple miles, but I really felt that same feeling again. And you know what, now I'm thinking about it, it's kind of that feeling you get when you get sleep paralysis. It's that feeling like somebody's probing you or trying to do something with your consciousness.
Yeah, and you don't have control of your own body. Your brain works and you can think and you can look around and feel things, and it's really creepy, but you don't have control of your body, which is like the worst, absolute worst feeling on the planet.
So these are some of the structures that we saw out there that were really curious. This one, it didn't have a greatest vibe here either. I don't know if somebody constructed that, or how could that be natural? There's so much of it just collapsing and falling. Yeah, I could almost see some sort of titan right here. This is its head. This is its shoulder with its arm. This is the other arm in the ground, back right here. That looks like C7. If you guys are familiar with that. This is that. Look at how well that's placed together. Look at how well that's placed together. It's like seamless. Now, we were talking and Cindy said, what if it was something, or maybe I said, I don't know, you said, what if it just like crashed? Mm-hmm. Like something was straight up, like a tower straight up, and it just came boom down and just shattered. I don't know if it would shatter and split like that. I don't know, but it was so, and this is an area nobody lives. Mm-hmm. Nobody lives there, I mean, literally, like I was saying, if you go, to the east of this area is the military bases. There's nothing but military bases for probably 120 miles long. and maybe 60 miles across, at least. West is Death Valley, and again, you will go before you're to any major population center. Your closest population center is going to be Ridgecrest area, going that way. North, 60 miles, for a big population center. South, 70 miles. And there's probably only maybe 1,000 people that live in the area around this, if that. And, nobody lives over here. There's no houses. There's nothing like that. And, the thought is, it's just Native Americans before that. There's never supposedly been a big civilization in the American West before the Native Americans. Nobody that built megalithic structures. So, I don't know. To me, it's extremely curious.
It is. And when we were up there, that dizzy feeling I got was just horrible. And the headache, I think, might have been from the chemtrails, but the energy was disgusting. It was warlike. It was like something was suffering. Definitely unresolved energy up there.
Yeah, and again, this is right at the edge of Death Valley. It's right at the very edge of Death Valley. And, as I shared with you guys before, the Panamint Mountains, that's where supposedly guys fell through a hole in the desert and discovered a treasure trove, just a huge city under the ground, which now that area is part of China Lake. And, so you got to wonder about that as well, with the military base right there. And all you got to do, and they found giants there, and they found gold, and they found relics that were very, very Egyptian, and also stuff that looked Tibetan. So that's here. That's the Panamint Mountains. The area where we were is right about here, right in this area. So again, very close to the Panamint Mountains. Here's the Panamint Mountains, right? And this is again, there's supposed to be an underground city here that the giants inhabited. And when we look, China Lake is right there. There's Trona, China Lake, Ridgecrest. This is where all the earthquakes are going, and this is the Panamint Mountains, and this is the area we've been exploring. And it's interesting, to say the least. I think I don't doubt that this whole inner Earth thing extends over to here, and probably extends over to here, because this is the Nevada test site. This is Nellis Air Force Base. This is Area 51 and all that. Groom Lake. I think my gut says this is all connected underneath, and that's why we're seeing all this stuff.
Yeah, it feels like a ancient, like ruins, like stuff has been just blasted to bit, like Mother Earth has been scarred, and it's so sad. Because nobody really wants to be here, and I wonder if she feels lonely because it is so desolate. Just a thought.
Yeah, Grand Canyon is definitely something we're going to go exploring as well. Yes, there was a bunch of the Egyptian artifacts found in the Grand Canyon. So, it's interesting, right? Because this is, again, the whole Southwest. And here you go. Death Valley Giants. This is what we're talking about here. And I've talked about this before. This one, the Legends of America, the hidden city of Death Valley under the ground. And there's been many cases of this. And this handsome fellow right here, was discovered in California in this area. Interesting. Very interesting. Our history is not what we think it is. Look at how these just it's like a jigsaw puzzle, perfectly going together. And then that up there, somebody had said it looked like a sacrum. And, that, it gave me a vibe of like that might have been a fort or something at some period in time. There's so much fallen rock everywhere. You kind of know that at any time something could fall on you, so you're a little cautious. And because some of these rocks are gigantic and cut and carved. I mean, look at that. Now, I don't know. We saw some stuff that looked like petrified wood of trees that would have been just enormous. That right there. Very interesting. Look at how flat that is. So, we've seen a lot of interesting structures out there. A ton. And there's tons of caves that we have found. Mining caves and stuff that were abandoned. I found human footprints outside of one that, once that looked really, like I'm wondering if it's Bigfoot, honestly. Humanoid footprints bare in the desert. Who was walking out there barefoot? Ain't me.
I know, right? You would need like really strong feet to do. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Outlaw Bob Barker. We appreciate that so much. That's super sweet.
Thank you so much, my friend, for your support. Petroglyphs, I've seen them, not in this area, but I have seen them before when I was in New Mexico exploring. And honestly, I got that northeast of Los Alamos camping. It had definitely the same sort of feeling again that I get in this area a lot, and I just think it's related to dumbs and reptilians is what it feels like to me. Yeah, thank you guys so much for your support of the channel. So as always, guys, please do, if you feel so inclined, join us on Patreon and support us that way. There's different tiers up now too, so just so you see, for those that are interested, it just takes $1 to help support the channel over there a month. And then there's a different tier at $10 where you could give us a topic and we'll make a video on it, as long as it's something within reason that kind of makes sense. At $25, you would get a monthly tarot reading, and or you could work with Cindy over here doing some Vedic astrology, because she does do Vedic astrology charts as well. I haven't put that up there yet. But yeah, Cindy's big into Vedic astrology, which is, she feels, and many people feel, is more accurate than Western. And then also at the $50 level, then you would get a 60-minute energy session, intuitive reading, coaching session, whichever you preferred. So we appreciate your support over there or on Ko-Fi. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the second channel, EE Arts, and that's more on the spiritual side of things. I really liked this video, the last one that we did on the divine matrix, and some amazing coincidences, or are they really just evidence that we're living in a matrix that has programming to it? So as always, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, I got to talk to Roger at Mud Fossil. I've watched, bits and pieces of maybe a dozen or more of his videos. Good stuff. Would most definitely welcome talking to him and showing him what we got. I love being out in the field. To me, that is so much fun. And as I shared with you guys, we're going to get on the road probably in February. I'm actually on Wednesday going to look at some travel trailers. And we'll start to do videos about that as well.
We will, and we look forward to talking to you guys again really super soon.
As always, my friends, God bless and namaste.
Namaste.